No one really knows what the sweet spot is to make a film hit that cult classic status, as some are just so bad they're good and others are simply overlooked gems. But if your film hits that stride, it can mean that people to this day and beyond will endlessly quote and reenact its scenes. So today we're going to look at films that didn't make a huge box office impact, but have been picking up steam for years to become rolling juggernauts. I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 failed movies that became cult classics. Number 10. Natural Born Killers. Oliver Stone's highly controversial 1994 satirical crime thriller may have benefited from a Quentin Tarantino-penned screenplay and a cracking cast, namely Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, Robert Downey Jr. and Tommy Lee Jones, but it tanked at the box office and scored middling reviews from critics. The film was lambasted by the mainstream media for inspiring copycat killings, which definitely didn't help, but since then, Natural Born Killers lives on as a cult favourite. Stone's bold, visually dynamic direction combines with Tarantino's sledgehammer subtle critique of American culture and a quartet of unforgettable performances to deliver an uncommonly confronting piece of filmmaking. It's an undeniably messy film, yes, but also a shining example of the hot-blooded, muscular work that Stone was capable of in his earlier years. It's brilliant, but absolutely exhausting to watch. Number 9. Event Horizon. This grisly sci-fi horror flick is surely the best thing ever directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, despite the fact it didn't even crack half its $60 million budget worldwide and holds an inexplicably low 26% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Event Horizon became popular with sci-fi fans almost immediately after it hit home video, and 20-plus years later, it's continually held up as one of the most striking and underappreciated genre offerings of its period. Stylish, inventively gory, and boasting the most scenery-chewing performances by Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, Event Horizon is a bizarre tale that courts mainstream films just enough to be considered bad by their standards, but has enough unique visuals and blunt storytelling to give it layers of intrigue. In short, Event Horizon is a film which might be cheesy, but its atmosphere is something unparalleled. Number 8. The Boondock Saints. The story of the Boondock Saints' eventual release is an absolutely fascinating one, and arguably more compelling than the actual movie itself. Writer-director Troy Duffy's script started out as one of the hottest to hit the circuit in the late 90s in Hollywood. However, when shooting began, production woes and the unfortunate timings of the Columbine shootings meant that only 5 cinemas showcased the film in the US, and only for a single week. After it made just $30,471 theatrically and opened to a largely negative set of reviews, Blockbuster of all people came to the rescue and released it straight to video, where it went on to gross approximately $50 million, pushing the $6 million thriller far into the black. Critics hated it, and the film was sent out to die in cinemas, but the home video crowd fell in love with it. Maybe it was because the film played fast and loose with the concepts of taste and tone. Maybe it was the gratuitous violence and bizarre characters, or maybe it was just because Willem Dafoe was utterly mental in it. Either way, thank you, Blockbuster. May you rest in peace. Number 7. Dune. When David Lynch was ultimately hired for this job of bringing the story to life and ending up costing the studio $40 million to make, a staggering amount I might add, it was made even more painful when it opened to both brutal reviews and less than a stellar box office opening, which failed to make its money back. Dune was skewered for its impenetrable script, unconvincing effects, and excess of melodrama, while Lynch himself eventually would go on to admit that he probably shouldn't have even made the movie. And you know what? I hate that David Lynch was made to feel bad, as the man is an utter genius, and this film Dune, while being absolutely bat-balls mental, does not deserve the 55% Rotten Tomatoes rating it now has. And clearly, I'm not alone, as fans of the original novel and the film itself are now found everywhere, popping up like the giant sandworms, shouting about how underappreciated this flick is. It's baffling to think that David Lynch got this amount of money to tell this particular story in the first place, as is the tale it's trying to tell itself, but it's a damn spectacle nonetheless, and I'm glad it's getting some love. Number 6. The Room. Director Tommy Wiseau may refuse to admit it, but clearly his 2003 romantic drama The Room was created as an earnest attempt at a prestige-worthy movie. Produced on an explicable budget of $6 million, the film scooped just $1,800 from its initial theatrical run, with reviews railing it for Wiseau's flat direction and inconsistent performance, as well as its melodramatic and incoherent screenplay. But this, of course, transpired into cult success years later, as the film's infamy went viral, and Wiseau himself took advantage by hosting retrospective screenings catering to those who took a perverse joy in the movie's hilarious badness. In the years that followed, a book was released, a video game, and, of course, the actually terrific movie The Disaster Artist, which ironically scored a Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar nomination. It's a terrific result for a movie which could have so easily faded into obscurity and been lost to time, but thanks to its unique, charming awfulness and Tommy's industrious promotion, The Room will endure for decades, if not longer, as the Citizen Kane of bad movies. Number 5. Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate is perhaps the most infamous example of filmmaker hubris that Hollywood has ever seen. Now, fresh off the Best Picture and Best Director Oscar wins for The Deer Hunter 2 years prior, Michael Cimino conceived an epic historical western which ended up quadrupling its initial planned budget as it ran wildly off schedule. The near 4-hour final film was a mind-boggling box office failure, grossing just $3.5 million against a $44 million budget. Its disastrous performance caused both the financial collapse of Studio United artists and the destruction of the director's career as a result. Fun stuff, right? To rub salt in the wound, it was also instantly scorned by critics, with many even deeming it to be one of the worst movies ever made. Ouch. However, that wasn't going to fly with those who saw the film's potential, as through re-edits and studio changes, the film has loped into the mainstream time and time again, getting slightly better responses each time. Though many recent reviews still contend that Heaven's Gate is a tough slog to get through, its sheer scale, ambition, and heart-on-sleeve emotion has won it a cavalcade of staunch defenders. It's not a film that you'd likely want to see more than once, but seriously, if you've got an afternoon to kill and want to be battered by the concept of intention, give this a go. Number 4. The Fountain. Over a decade before Darren Aronofsky confounded audiences and critics alike with Mother, he befuddled everyone with another glossy existential fantasy epic known as The Fountain, a film which marketed itself as a millennium-spanning meditation on love, life, and death. Ooh, how brilliant. Even with its fairly modest $35 million budget, given the ambition and visual majesty of the project, it tanked with audiences and failed to gross even half of its price tag, while critics remain kind of mixed on the whole bag. But just like Mother, the movie has its fans for sure, with Aronofsky's signature arresting visuals, loose spiritualist themes, and of course, a killer musical score preventing The Fountain from just fading into obscurity. If you can swallow down some of Aronofsky's more heavy-handed and arguably pretentious symbolism, there's a sumptuous emotional feast of a movie here, and you can almost watch it thrice in the time that it takes to watch Heaven's Gate, so there's that, I guess. Number 3. Showgirls. Fresh off the massive success of 1992's erotic thriller Basic Instinct, director Paul Verhoeven opted to helm this epic $45 million erotic drama, a movie which upon release became an instant scarlet letter for about everyone involved. Savaged by critics for its unintentional humour, awful performances, excessive length, Vicar, and actual lack of titillation, Showgirls went on to win 7 Razzie Awards, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actress, and Worst Screenplay. Reviews combined with a restrictive NC-17 rating resulted in it failing to even make its budget back theatrically compared to Basic Instinct's incredible $352.9 million haul on a similar budget. However, in the 25 years since its release, the tide of opinion has turned somewhat, with the film grossing over $100 million on home video, being embraced by fans as a campy, self-aware classic, and even accepted as a serious satire by some contemporary critics. Weird. Number 2. John Carter. The live-action directorial debut of Finding Nemo and WALL-E's Andrew Stanton is one of the most colossal flops of the last decade, a $300 million plus sci-fi action epic that styled itself as the next Avatar. However, when it hit the big screens, it was met with a Well, an audible sigh from critics. I mean, sure, the film looked great, they said, but it was empty and bland throughout. Audiences weren't particularly enthused either, with the movie falling just shy of making its budget back, though in blockbuster terms it needed to gross around $600 million to actually turn a decent profit. And yet, almost immediately after John Carter was released, a cult of fandom emerged around it, enamored with its ambition, old-school charm, and unique style. Many lamented that it wasn't successful enough to get a sequel, and though it's not exactly regarded as criminally underappreciated these days, many fell in love with its singular aesthetic and throwback appeal. And number 1, Troll 2. Long before The Room, 1990 fantasy horror Troll 2 was agreed by pretty much everyone who ever watched it to be the best worst movie ever made. Though it was made under the title Goblins, it was marketed as a sequel to the 1986 box office success Troll, which it has actually no tangible connections to. Hell, Troll 2 doesn't even feature any trolls. It's all about goblins. Despite bombing at the box office and being universally scorned for its appalling writing, direction, and performances, Troll 2 won a second life as a viral online hit in the early 2000s. Ever since, Troll 2 has become a bad quote machine, and as much as it fails to be a serious horror film, its over-the-top crap factor has meant that it's endured way beyond it should have had any right to do. So for old time's sake, let's give it a resounding salute of, oh my